Welcome everyone to You in the Netherlands. I'm just gonna kick it off. I'm Katharina. I'm the host for today. I have two wonderful guests that I'm gonna be speaking about in a quick moment. And I'm also new in the Netherlands. I came to the Netherlands about 2.5 years ago and been here ever since. Started studying here and then started working at Hello Mentor, and now I'm a community manager here with Hello Mentor, and that's why I'll be leading you through this webinar. I hope it's going to be very informative, also somewhat entertaining as we go along. And we have a Q&A segment at the end, so I'll invite you to save all your questions to the end and then ask them to both of our speakers that we have today, both of our guests. I want to quickly do a short announcement about our main speaker that we would have had, Andrew Stesenko. He's the CEO of Relocate Me, but he lives in Ukraine, Kiev. And I'm not sure if everyone's followed recent news, but Russia has started invading Ukraine. So Ukraine is now a country of war as of last night, meaning that Andrew is very unsafe right now. And that also means that he cannot join us, which we understand, and we send all the love and the support and hope that he is safe along with all of his friends and family and everyone living in Ukraine. If you want to send a kind message in the chat to Andrew, I'll be forwarding it to him. Maybe also send just a heart, something to show our support, I think. Yeah, it's very much appreciated in this moment for everyone living in Ukraine. Thank you, Bruno. Yeah, it's well, we only found out this morning that he was not going to be able to join in light of recent news. So we had to pivot a little bit. So I'm going to have my founder of Hello Mentor, the company that I work for, Quincy Dalh, I'm going to have him join later on to speak on all of the important issues of working in the Netherlands, finding a job. Thank you for all the hearts that are coming in. I'm happy to see so much support and so much love going out to the people of Ukraine and Andrew specifically. So yeah, I'm going to have Quincy Dalh join me later on stage to talk all about the tips and tricks and the advice that we can all need for working and starting a job in the Netherlands. I want to share at the beginning already 3 tips that have really, or looking back now, that made it a bit easier, even though it was quite the challenge. I would say in the early application process, it is quantity over quality. That sounds a bit wrong because you think, oh, we need to tailor all the CVs and tailor all the cover letters to every company. But in the beginning, the early application process, just send as many a day as you can, get your CV out there. And then when it comes back, then shine in the job interview. That's how I got where I am today. The second one is choose your manager, not your job. And this sounds a bit, yeah, I know, choose your job in the first place. Of course, no one does that, especially if you're struggling finding one. But what I mean by that is really look who's going to be your manager, see if there is a personal connection, and also look who's in your team that you're going to be working with, because most of the time you're going to be spending working together with people. It's going to be in meetings. Obviously, you're going to do the tasks that you have, but also focus on who are the people that are going to be surrounding me, say 40 hours a week. That's quite a lot of time spent with people that hopefully you enjoy hanging out with. And the third piece of advice that I want to give you, especially because I think we're all internationals in this call, present your diversity as an asset. And I mean that with all my heart. I think it can get really, it's easy to demonize yourself for saying, oh, I'm not fluent in Dutch enough, I don't do this enough, I don't know too much about the Dutch culture, I feel a bit insecure about everything. But use that diversity, that like experience that you bring in from a different perspective, an international perspective. Use the languages that you've acquired along the way and the skills and the experience in different countries as an asset that you bring to the table in a new team. Any company that values you as an employee will value that perspective, that new perspective that a Dutch person cannot bring to the table. So always present it as an asset instead of maybe even apologizing for not speaking Dutch fluent enough yet, or not speaking Dutch at all, which is also fine. there's so much that comes in when you, well, that plays a part when you come to a new country. Language is probably on the bottom list of things that you need to tackle first. So yeah, these are the 3 tips that I have right up. Tennyson, I want to first of all ask a probably very introductory question of how did you end up in the Netherlands and where are you now?
Hi, Katharina. Thanks for inviting me for this talk. Those are very good questions. As a quick introduction to my background, I was born in Taiwan, but grew up in South Africa. I was pretty much a baby when our family moved to South Africa. So that is largely where I grew up. And in terms of how I ended up in the Netherlands, that's a funny story because I never actually planned to end up in the Netherlands. I remember in Afrikaans class in high school, when I was in South Africa, our language teacher would try to convince us that, we should learn this language because you never know, one day you might end up in the Netherlands, and Afrikaans is very similar to Dutch. So then you might use it then. A lot of people in the class, including me, rolled our eyes because South Africa is in the southern tip of Africa and the Netherlands is so far away. What are the chances that I would actually get to use Afrikaans in the Netherlands? That happened. Yeah, so how I ended up there, I'll admit, wasn't that magical. It was rather sort of pragmatic and scientific in my approach. I had moved back from South Africa to Taiwan for a bit of time and finished my substitute military service. As part of being a Taiwanese citizen, I need to do my service to the country because I'm a boy, and that's part of the requirements. But then after that, I wasn't too sure what to do with my life. And I had a cousin who recommended doing a master's somewhere in Europe. And this is where I'll admit, our family's background wasn't too wealthy. So growing up in South Africa, which is still in a way a developing country, thinking or having the idea of studying in Europe sounded very expensive. But then that's when my cousin convinced me, actually, there are lots of programs in Europe that at least the tuition fees themselves aren't actually that expensive. So then that's when I started to look. And then this is where sort of I tried to be pragmatic about it. So I was looking for somewhere where the fees weren't very high, but also then I would get a good quality education. And the Amsterdam Business School, as part of the University of Amsterdam, ranked quite highly in the sort of the top university rankings around the world. And then I think they were also Triple Crown accredited for their MBA program. So I thought, well, that sounds really cool. So let me try apply, and then I got in. That's Wonderful. How I ended up in the Netherlands.
I think that's most of us, just looking sort of globally. Where is it not going to break my bank to study somewhere that is actually has a good reputation where I can get some good education? Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think, resonates with lots of us. Talking about that, making that move, that international move, what made the relocation to the Netherlands easier than you expected?
The fact that the university sent a bus to fetch us at the airport made things a lot easier, because then I didn't have to arrive in a country and then have to figure out where I would be sleeping or anything like that. So before I left Taiwan, as part of the package that the university offered, I also got student housing. So then sort of where I would stay and how I would get there was already sorted. Other things that made it easier, well, I guess, was the fact that in Amsterdam, at least, and I think in other parts of the Netherlands as well, I can't confirm because I haven't been, English is used quite often, and English is my first language. So then it made moving around quite easy. Yeah, I guess those were the main things. I guess part of it was also my background, in that I grew up sort of as a bit of an outsider in a foreign country. So then I was used to a bit more of a multicultural environment.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What you said there with English being used a lot, especially in the Amsterdam area, that really helps. That makes it a lot easier for me as well. I remember starting my master's and thinking, oh, this is a lot easier than in Spain, where I had to struggle in the beginning. Yeah, using English everywhere is really helpful. Tell us a bit about how you got to the job that you have now. Was that, well, from studying to where you are now? How was that experience?
I will admit, my journey from graduating to getting my job has not been pretty or glamorous in any way. I graduated in June of 2020 into what I thought, probably quite foolishly, was the middle of the COVID pandemic. Years now, with hindsight, I realize now that that was just the start of the COVID pandemic, unfortunately. But at the time, I really struggled to find any sort of a graduate program that sort of people somewhat promised when I was studying for my master's degree, because obviously a lot of the companies realized, well, if we're going to go into an economic recession, probably we won't have the funds to hire new people and train them up. We will probably struggle to just keep our existing employees. So I ended up applying for a lot of roles in a lot of companies. Honestly, emotionally, it took its toll. I think by the end, I applied to 283 or 284 companies before getting the offer from the company I'm at now.
Let me just rephrase that again. You applied to 284 companies before finding your job that you have now, which I don't want to, thank you for being so candid about it, because I think this shows a lot of, well, your bravery to share this with the world, but also showing how difficult it was and how difficult it still is for us to, well, recent graduates to find a job. Thank you for sharing your experience, because I think it really resonates with a lot of people.
Thanks.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
So obviously there are a lot of tips that I've learned along the way, and with hindsight, there are things that I feel like I could have done better. So if you're going into the Netherlands, or if you're currently studying, something that I noticed was what would be great if you're trying to find a job in the Netherlands is to, as quickly as possible, contact your student career center, start getting in touch with them to see what programs and things are that they're offering. I did that. I thought I did that very quickly, but then in hindsight, I realized doing it 1 or 2 months after I started studying was too late, in that other people had started that process on day one. So as soon as they arrived, they had gone to the career center and then started applying for spots at, say, a career fair where they could get into workshops with companies and then actually start showing their faces to those companies. By the time I got there to apply, there were only spots for lectures, in which case you were sitting in a classroom full of maybe 100, 200 people. And then the same recruiters probably wouldn't remember you.
Yeah.
So that's a tip, is to get involved immediately if that's what you're looking for. They shared a lot of tips with me. Of course, when you're there, you can have your CV reviewed, and then they can actually sort of tailor your CV to something that perhaps Dutch recruiters would be more interested in seeing. And that was very helpful.
Yeah, that's good. If I can stop you here quickly, I also want to throw in your degree was a 1-year degree. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, that also explains why you thought, well, day one, I need to get in, because I only have sort of 9-10 months to prepare myself for the workforce, for the labor market.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's such a good piece of advice to say, find those ecosystems or find your career center at your university and get in touch super early. I wish I had done that as well. That's really good advice. What we also see is that these career centers, they have sort of the feelers out already. They have a network with companies. They have partnerships that can help you along the way. If you are studying right now, or you're a recent graduate, then still reach out to the career center and say, hi, I just graduated from you guys. Can you please help out? That's a really good piece of advice. Yeah. I want to ask you as well about a different sort of approach to the job market, what do you think a company or team should absolutely provide for a new international employee from your own experience?
That's a very good question. So my company seems really cool, at least to me. They seem amazing. They've offered a very generous relocation package, and they've also offered support. So for example, they bought plane tickets for me to fly from Taiwan to Amsterdam, and hopefully I'm flying tomorrow actually. So that made my life a lot easier. They've also arranged accommodation for when I do arrive. So I guess it's those sorts of things in terms of support, and helping out with processing the visa would be really cool as well. And then I think this next tip is true for everyone, not just internationals. It would be great if sort of onboarding support was more thorough and more comprehensive in terms of getting new people into your company and letting them sort of showing them the tips and showing them around the office, that sort of a thing, and letting them know what the processes are like.
Those are two really good pieces of advice. One more geared towards non-EU citizens, because EU citizens don't require a visa to work. But for non-EU, that's really important to know, okay, is the company, well, first of all, does the company sponsor me for my work visa, which is crucial, otherwise that won't happen. But also, is there a relocation package that is involved with your company? It's very generous with lots of companies can't or don't want to splurge on that, let's say. So that's wonderful. Congratulations on finding such a good place to work and being welcomed in that way. Thank you so much for sharing all your experience and pieces of advice. Quincy, let me ask you, how did you become the CEO of Hello Mentor? And how did that go for you? In a short description.
Yeah, well, thank you. For those of you who don't know me yet, I'm Quincy Dalh. I'm the founder of Hello Mentor. And Hello Mentor originated when I was working at the university. I was responsible for the career activities for the STEM students. And I had the opportunity to develop all sorts of concepts and programs to help them to transition to the job market better. And what we saw at the Vrije University of VU, it's a university here in Amsterdam, one of the biggest universities here in Amsterdam, is that there were over 50% of the new students were internationals. So we really had to have a focus on how to help them really get here into the job market. What do they need as well? So in my programs, I've hopefully helped or at least seen more than thousands of international students and guided them hopefully a bit into the job market. And Hello Mentor originated because there are so many different questions about their career, what's asked for me, but also more in-depth questions. For example, what does the work really looks like within a company? And those are questions, of course, I do know a lot, but I'm not working day in, day out at a cybersec department. So the connection was simple. Let's connect those students to people who already been there and who have the experience. And that's how Hello Mentor actually got developed and started off with. And it started off with just by helping people, and it exploded in our hands. And now we're here with this beautiful webinar. We're all here. So again, thank you for all being here.
Yeah, great start to this journey. I think that we're on together. My next question for you, and this is diving in deep, I would say, is where do you see the biggest challenges on the job market for internationals, but as well as Dutch? Yeah,
I think the Dutch job market, labor market, or the Dutch society is quite an interesting bunch of people. And I think one of the key things is getting into the right networks and getting to know the right people. And that means going to meetups, be active, be proactive as well, like you, Katharina, and Tennyson just said, like, start early. The earlier you start, the more opportunity you have, you build your network to get your name out there. Because the Dutch are quite close, in close circles, they have quite close circles, small groups of friends or people they know. But once you're in there and you get to understand them, and they make an introduction, or they know somebody who can help you further alongside. So be really open and have a chat with people, and be friendly to people, and they're really really open to help you as well. So if you're nice, if you're open, if you ask the right questions as well, just try to be brief. The Dutch try to be brief, and are pretty brief and direct. I think that's something that I think some internationals need to get used to. The Dutch can say like no or yes without any hard feelings, but they can be quite direct in their communication, and that's nothing personal. It's just that the way they communicate. So go out there, but make those connections, because those connections can really help you in this specific labor market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, sort of building up your network, connecting to people. Do you have a specific tip on how to do that? How to get the networking going?
If you are already in the Netherlands, go to vrijniveaus. In Dutch, we have a word called vrijniveau. It's a strange word, but every Friday there are drinks from 5, sometimes also on Thursday, but from 5 till 7, where people get together, people you never met before. But it's like a open drinks, and they have a few whatever you like to drink, and you can just have a chat with people, getting to know each other, and that's where you really build relationships. But also going to events. My networking tip one-on-one for events is just speak to somebody you really like. Get in touch with somebody you really like. You have something in common with, and that will flourish. And go to those events. And some even, like how Katharina and I met, just approach me via LinkedIn with a nice message. So that can also help. Like, okay, that's a nice message. Let's have a chat. So the Dutch are really like, okay, that's a good message, I understand, and also try to understand who you're talking to. Sometimes what also happens is like you get like a really fake message that can be applicable to anybody, but the more tailored you make, the more personalized you make, and the Dutch are really sensitive for that. Like, oh, they're talking to me. Oh, they feel a bit special, but it helps to start off a relationship. So really try to understand. If you're going to, for example, use LinkedIn for networking purposes, okay, who am I going to talk to? What's the message I'm going to send him? Not just a regular plain message, because that will they will throw that away. But once you have that angle, for example, oh, you also like to play tennis or whatever, or you see some commonalities, that really helps to start off a relationship.
Yeah, that's a good thing to say. Sort of look for the similarities, for something that you have in common, and get to get going with that, get you in that way. Neil asked in the chat, can you name the place where we can network that Quincy mentioned? I think to give a bit more context to the vrijniveau concept, it is something that companies organize for their employees. So it is sort of a team building activity on a Friday afternoon. In terms of events, there's lots of networking events that I'll be sharing on screen. But Quincy, you have something.
Yeah, can I ask for? So there are also open vrijniveaus where people, for example, you go to meetup.com. There are, specifically for expats, there are lots of events on meetup.com. You go to Amsterdam City, and all sorts of topics can be really or more really skills based, can be really just networking, can be just having drinks about guitars, whatever. But that's really a place where you can start off with building a network, and that's not just company focused. It's for everybody who wants to network or get to know people. And I think even right now, much of them are also online. Some of them are also online, so you can start off with tasting a little bit, like what's the Dutch culture like. But there are many. Many also open. For example, we at the office where Katharina is right now, I'm working from home today. We also on Thursday have our own drinks, where also different companies get together. You can meet and mix and mingle. So it's also an opportunity on co-working spaces, on meetup.com. Just be a bit sensitive about what if there are. It always says drinks in the Dutch. There are always drinks. And then you know there's a place to network.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Quincy. I wasn't actually aware that there is open vrijniveau. out there. But it's a wonderful thing. Yeah, I use Meetup a lot. Oh, Neil asks, could we do a Bruinmibo by Hello Mentor?
Katharina is our event and community manager. We'll try to plan it. We'll get back to you.
Neil, that sounds lovely. Let's plan it. I would love that. I'll keep you updated. Okay, one last question from me, and then we can go into the Q&A. What advice, sort of one or two pieces of advice that we haven't spoken yet about, can you give students or recent graduates who want to break into tech internationally?
Advice. I think we talked about a few really important things. Oh, maybe, and as it sounds a little bit strange, because of course, like earlier has been discussed, the Netherlands has a quite low unemployment rate, so there are many jobs and vacancies available. So what you see right now, that companies are getting more and more open for internationals to work for them. So as for example, Katharina says, go out there and write companies, they are more and more open for internationals because we have a lack of good talent here in the Netherlands. They're not coming from our own universities because there are too little, we're too small. So that's a really great opportunity. And an advice could also be, that's also what Katharina did, is understanding again. It's a little bit, you can go for quantity, but quality also works when you really understand what the company is doing. I'm not sure if you remember a few years ago, the lady who wanted to work at Airbnb, and the way that she did a whole research about why Airbnb is really great, how they can expand. She really understood what Airbnb needed to grow. And her CV went viral that all the major tech companies wanted to have her of her approach. So the diversity that Katharina mentioned, how show your diversity, how you would approach things differently, how you can help a company. Diversity and inclusion is a really big thing in the Netherlands as well. There even are budgets for it. All the corporates have a diversity and inclusion officer, so they're looking for diverse talent in the broader sense. So diversity and inclusion is really something that you can tap into if you're an international, because the Dutch society is really sensitive for it. A tip, just a fun thing. I think the infrastructure here in the Netherlands is really well. I think if you, for traveling, for biking, we're a biking country, even if it rains. Well, Joe, our colleague, doesn't go if it rains, and me neither that often. But I think also it's nice that when you get here, there's a good infrastructure where you can really settle, where you can find your place. I think that really makes living here and staying here, I think, nice.
I want to start with Aishwarya. She sent me an email early with her question, and she rephrased it in the chat as well, saying, I'm a citizen of India and want to relocate to the Netherlands, but do not speak Dutch. Would a company consider relocating me if I don't know Dutch and would like to pursue a different role? Now, in the chat, she added that she is looking for UI developer roles in the information technology sector. So she says her profile gets rejected because they need the Dutch language.
Okay, I think there are also maybe two things. So if you're relocating and you're looking for a new role in the Netherlands, so you got to do something different than you have done before, that can be sometimes a little bit for recruiters here in the Netherlands, like, okay, are you able, because you're going to be relocated. So it can be quite uncertain whether or not you are able to have that role. So it's easier, I would say, just to be honest, if you're going to relocate, in your expertise that you already have, because then you can, that's what you can showcase. That's what those recruiters understand that are going to read your CV. Like I said, the Dutch language is getting less. The Dutch, for example, the English language in Amsterdam is the second official language in Amsterdam. So in Amsterdam, we all speak English. So English is really important. So if your English is well, if you are able to express yourself in a good manner, what you want to achieve, why you want to work there. There's also, again, understanding, because it's it's also for companies, even if they are more open for it, it's still quite newish still, or they're already been doing it, of course, but if they want to get you to the Netherlands, then make sure that you both understand each other really well, what to expect and how you can deliver and what you can bring to the table, because they're going to invest in you. So make sure that you get it crisp and clear what you can bring to the table. So that's why I said, if you already have an expertise, it might be easier to explain yourself, like, I can do this for you. And then the company says, okay, I need this. Super simple way of thinking, but yeah.
If I can add on quickly to this, because I think what happens here a lot is that with LinkedIn quick apply, there's certain criteria that you need to tick, otherwise the system rejects you. What I would tell you to do then is to, because there is a name attached to the vacancy. Get in touch with them and say, hi, this is my situation. This is what I can bring to the table. I'm willing to learn Dutch, well, say 5 years from now, however long it might take. You don't necessarily have to mention that, but get in touch with that person, create that personal connection that Quincy talked about earlier, so that you can forego the system rejecting you. I think that's what happens a lot. And then also look for companies that are multinationals or startups, so either really big or really small, because these are the ones who are really in tune with culture, with diversity and inclusion, with forward thinking of English being the main language of use, even if it's a fully Dutch team. So go either really big, because they can help you with relocation, or really small, because they might still have the need and want to take you on board. Quincy.
Maybe to add to that, the strange thing about the Netherlands, all the SMEs, so the companies, small, medium enterprise, so the in-between companies, between startups and more the corporates, they're typically they speak only Dutch. Their whole documentation is in Dutch, because they are, there's something that's a bit strange about Dutchies, like Katharina said, like some don't even speak English internally, even if they do speak English verbally, but their whole culture internally is Dutch, so they are more of a resistant hiring and international. So startups usually typically with growth ambitious, international ambitions already speak English. Corporates with international offices speak English a lot. So it's a good point.
That might be a piece of advice that would help. Kavit says that's definitely true. When I was in the Netherlands, I would try to speak with someone in Dutch, but the people would notice that I was struggling and would instantly switch to English. But that's very true. Even if you try and you show I want to, but I just can't yet, that's already something that is really, really highly appreciated. I've, in my own experience as well in the Netherlands. Moving on to the second question that I got previous to the event, Ariel asked, what's the best advice you can give to help plan a career rather than simply work to keep a job? Sort of long-term goal, how do you set yourself up for a career instead of just working in a job that you might not enjoy as much?
We of course are Hello so of course I will say find somebody who can help you. And I'm making a little bit of a joke, but with Elementary focus on study work transition right now, but we all internally also have our own mentors. So having somebody who can guide you also later phases of your career is super helpful. I myself, for example, in regards to entrepreneurship, somebody who really knows about all the challenges on entrepreneurship, but Katharina for community engagement and Joe for marketing. So there are different ways where you can find people, and we are Elemental, but there are many more programs available where you can find somebody, and I think that somebody who can help you personally, who can have a chat with you, who can really understand what you need, because I don't believe that, let's put it differently, a recruitment agency has a different approach. They want to get you that job as soon as possible. Is in the orientation phase, what you're also looking for, like, I want to transition. That's something you need more of a mentor for or a coach for that can help and guide you. Because you can scroll the internet, but there are so many articles, but just your situation is unique. And that's what you want to discuss.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's so much value in that, the personal approach to growth and professional development. I agree. Ariel has a follow-up question. Do you have any books that you would suggest I read? Maybe also resources in other ways that we could suggest?
About career development, about the Netherlands?
Yeah, I think this is still tied to career development.
Okay, cool. Yeah, not really books, but we will be sharing lots more articles the upcoming weeks, and because we have quite a bit of content already and things that we are reading, of course, in making Hello Mentor as Hello Mentor is. So we're going to share it more. So we also make sure that you're going to get that. So we are scrolling the internet, and every time we get something super interesting, we are collecting that. So we're going to share it with you. I don't have one book like this is the holy grail. Like if you read this, you know everything about career development. Yeah, there are different there are different approaches. We'll also share probably book tips or things we have read, but we'll get back to you. We'll get back to you with that.
Yeah, I'm working on a reading list, sort of an archive, something to share where books and resources are shared. So please, keep an eye on that on our socials and on our blogs. We'll be sharing that. I want to jump to Bruno has since asked the second question, but I want to jump first to your first one. Bruno says, I had an interview the other day in which they asked for professional experiences. How do you see the trade-off between being honest and telling too much about the personal life? Taking into consideration the Dutch culture likes the honesty, but they also have a clear limit between personal and professional life. What is that limit in your experience?
It's as long as it relates to work, that's what I think. That's the gray area. That's where, okay, it still relates to work. If it's too personal, and the Dutch are quite also closed in their personal private lives, they kind of drop off, and also they get quite uncomfortable. But if you're able to relate it, for example, just maybe a weird example, you like to play tennis, for example, and it relates to that you can work on your own, you have an overview, or you see certain skills that you do that relates to the work that you will be doing, but then also you do it in your private life that relates to the work you will be doing. So always try to see like, hey, does this, what I'm going to say, does it relate to the work that I will be doing? If not, then keep it for yourself. If it does, please elaborate, because then the recruiter or somebody can say like, oh, so you already are developing those skills also in different aspects. So keep in mind, like, does it add value, yes or no, for the job? If it's too fake, or for example, you tell about your home situation and whatever it is like, and maybe something that a recruiter can't really envision or can't understand, don't tell it, right? Because a recruiter is also just a person, and it's something is too much, it's too much.
Yeah. Thank you. I have another question from Kavid asking, is there something like a Dutch format of a CV resume that a prospective job seeker should be looking out for?
Yeah, there are. When I Google Dutch formats, I get, of course, all the Dutch formats. So I only know the Dutch formats, actually. But typically, a Dutch format is around about, to be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of CVs, because it tells a bit too much about your past and not about your potential, but that's just from my expert view. But typically, how CV is structured is your name, where you live, etc. Then your experience with your educational experience, your working experience, your certificates, hobbies, etc. in 2 pages. Programming skills, etc., languages. So a few small blocks, but usually in 2 pages. But there are formats, so we'll be sharing it as well. I'm going to just write it down. But there are some formats that every first-time CV maker uses. So I've seen so many of the same formats passing by. But that's a typical CV format that you see in the Netherlands. We'll share it with you as well.
Yeah, thank you. Bruno has another question saying, how do recruiters' job work? In the sense their goal is to allocate people in jobs, but they also pursue the person to stay in the new country, which is the main goal of them. I'm asking this in order to manage the communication with them. So what exactly is the goal and the job of a recruiter?
So you have 2 types of recruiters. You have the corporate recruiter and you have the agency recruiter. And just so you understand, the agency recruiter is an independent recruiter. Those are getting paid by companies to find the right people. And their goal is to find as soon as possible the right people for that company, because then they get a fee, just to be honest, and every recruiter knows this. So they get a fee because they place you then at that certain company. And that's what I do day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, just to see, okay, can I get a job from a company? Can I find the right person? And do that as soon as possible. Then you have the corporate recruiter. The corporate recruiter is a different recruiter. The corporate recruiter has more of an HR head on, so from the HR department. They work internally within a company, and their goal is just to work for that company. They get paid by the company or an employee of that company, and their goal is to successfully grow the team of the organization within that company. And their incentive is more like creating long-lasting, sustainable employmentships, because that's their goal, because they want to make sure that the company grows. They really focus on the growth of that company. So if you can really tell the difference. For example, if you're going to work at Hello Mentor and you want to work at Hello Mentor, and a recruiter from XY agency says, hey, I have a job at Hello Mentor, and he's not working at Hello Mentor, then you know that's an agency recruiter. He has a different incentive. His incentive is getting you ASAP in that role. Sometimes try to place you, make out of a square a box, or vice versa, just to get that job done. So they are less human-centric, more sales-oriented, while the corporate recruiter are really about the human, the person. How do you fit with the culture? Will it really work? And of course, this is not black and white, but you see there's a difference there. Does it answer a bit the question, because there were different layers to that question?
I think so. I think if I can add to that as well, what we see now with tech and IT recruitment with agencies is that it's a lot more focused now on the employee rather than on the prospective employee, rather than on the company, because the job market has turned. So if you're in tech, then chances are you get a lot of recruiters in your LinkedIn messages asking to relocate or to move to a different company. So in that way, it's a bit more human focused now, I would say, a bit more person focused. But yeah, definitely agencies are salespeople for sure. They want to make some money being the middleman. I think that answers the question. I hope so. It does, Bruno. Send us a follow-up if you need to know a bit more about that. Last question from our audience, and then we're gonna call it a day. Nidis asks, can you talk about how non-EU students can work towards getting the Dutch citizenship? How long does that take?
Oh, the Dutch citizenship, how long does it take? I think non-EU students, you have a search year, of course, in the Netherlands. So that's the first year after you graduated, you can find a job here in the Netherlands. You can stay in the Netherlands and find a job here. Then you need to find a recognized sponsor. We'll share information about it as well. Mm-hmm. And a recognized sponsor is a company that's recognized by the government that is safe and legal to hire, because they're going to screen that company, and you have to have enough funds to hire people, and you have to be safe for that. And there's a list out for those companies. We'll share that list as well with you, so you can find recognized sponsored list. And those are companies that they can hire international talent from all around the world. Mm-hmm. And then, if you are here long enough, you get a working permit here. Then at one point you get like a full visa, but you have to work. You have to be here at least 5 years in the Netherlands, and working here, paying taxes here in the Netherlands. That's why the Dutch people find important. Mm-hmm. You pay your taxes here, and then you are a real Dutchie because you paid to become Dutchie. So you need to find an employer that's a recognized sponsor. You can also start at a startup, and then some companies become recognized sponsors. But that's the easiest go-to at one point be a full resident here of the Netherlands.
Yeah, thank you. If I can add to that, so it takes 5 years. To be eligible to receive citizenship, and then there's 6 exams that you have to do. Language being a big part of that, also Dutch culture, and yeah, so there's a process. You need that sponsor, or if you have a partner who is a European citizen, then this person can become your sponsor. So there's different ways, but we'll be sharing about that. to round out this webinar, here are some recommended sources recommended by Hello Mentor. So look at the Career Center at your university if you're already an international student here. Also look at networking events and job fairs. Here, there's the I Am Expert Career Fair. There's the IT Expo for Women in Tech. Le Wagon is happening quite frequently, but also company-specific networking events. I know ADM does a lot of that. ING has quite a few networking events over the years that we've been able to follow. But also Hello Mentor does networking events. Hopefully once we're ready to launch again after COVID, this will be something that we want to do again. Looking also at ecosystems, this might be interesting for internationals who are still, well, not in the Netherlands yet, looking at companies, universities, or well, municipalities who are tied together in an ecosystem, such as Startup Amsterdam, if you're looking into getting into a startup, Brainport for the Eindhoven high-tech area, so that's North Brabant, region-specific. Delft has Yes Delft. So there's a few ecosystems that you can tap into to see what companies are out there and then get in touch with a person working there. And then the last one is mentorship. Obviously, what we do, we wouldn't be having this webinar sharing sort of a bit of our own story. Personal mentorship and personal connection on LinkedIn is, well, the fuel of everything job related. Make those connections early and yeah, get in touch with people who can help you further and build your network. That's all for me today. Thank you so much for joining. Please follow us on LinkedIn and share the one key learning from today and tag us if you want on LinkedIn or on any of your socials, anything that you took away today that's really helped you. We would love to hear from you and connect further. Thank you so much for participating.